and welcome back to yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. In this week's episode, we are going to look closer at what the smart money has been doing in Q4 of 2022, since the Form 13F filings has been published within this week. And at the end of the video, I will give a short update to my portfolio as well. Without further ado, let's jump to Data Roma, where we can see what the Superinvestors has been up to in Q4. So if we start with the Oracle from Omaha, namely Warren Buffett, so we click at Berkshire Hathaway and we go to activity, then we can see that there has been 11 changes in Q4. And the most noticeable here is Taiwan Semiconductors, since they have reduced their position by 86%. And I'm a bit baffled to see this. And the reason can actually be found here in Q3, since there they entered into Taiwan Semiconductors as a completely new holding. So what has the value investor, the long-term buy and hold investor, been doing when you're buying in one quarter and then in the next quarter you're selling 86%? So an initial guess to try and explain this would be to say they must have bought them at a significant discount and then later sold them when they were significantly overvalued. But based on the information we have from Data Roma, we know that they have been buying sometime during Q3, meaning from the 1st of July and until the end of September. So around $75 and all the way up to $90, that is their purchase price. And when we then look for the sell price, well, then it goes as low as $60 and all the way up to around $82. So at best they had a small gain, at worst they had a significant loss. Unfortunately, I don't think that we will become any wiser to this question before the annual shareholder meeting, but I really hope that someone is going to address this, since this is not the usual type of investment. You're actually tempted to call this trading rather than investing due to the short-term nature of this investment. I think this is the most interesting activity to look at in Q4 from Berkshire Hathaway. Of course, you can say it is also worthwhile to note that they have reduced their position in US Bancorp by more than 90% and close to 60% in Bank of New York Mellon. And personally, I am of course very interested to see what they are doing regarding their Activision Blizzard holding, since it's a company that I have in my portfolio as well. If we then go back to the overview arc here, and instead of looking at Berkshire Hathaway and their long-term investments, well, let's take a completely different direction, namely looking at Dr. Doom's portfolio, aka Michael Burry, since he is much more famously known for trading more heavily, meaning some of the positions that he is entering, he is pretty quickly exiting as well. So just to highlight here, for instance, back in Q2 in 2022, when he initiated a purchase in Geo Group, this private prison company, then a quarter later, he added an additional 300%. And you can see here in Q4 of 2022, he has now reduced it again. So much more frequent trading. So this is also one of the reasons why I would highly advise against trying to copy what he is doing. If you want to copy Michael Burry, simply let him manage your money instead, since you will have no way of mimicking what he is doing. And you can very clearly see that when you're looking through his investments here. What I mean by this is, when you take a look at his Q3 holdings, you can see that there are 4 companies which he initiated a position in Q3, and already in Q4 he has sold 100% of them. And then there's a 5th position which he entered in Q3, where he has now sold out 70%, meaning that his asset turnover rate is more than 100%, meaning all the assets which he has under management, they are turned over more than once a year. And this is not unusual. That is extremely hard for you as an individual to try and copy. So I would again highly discourage you to try and do so. The chances of you succeeding here are close to zero. If we then go back to the overview arc here and once again focus on a value investor like Mohnish Pabrai, for instance, and go to his activity, well, then we can see that the activity here is much, much lower. He didn't do any sells in Q4 of 2022. He did 3 buys. He added to Brookfield Corporation and Brookfield Asset Management, and then he added a little more to his Micron holding. So needless to say, I'm quite happy to see that he's still buying into Brookfield Asset Management and Brookfield Corporation, since that was one of my latest additions to my portfolio as well. So this was just my simple attempt to try and highlight some of the super investors here. I will highly encourage you to go and take a look at whatever investor who is on this list which you find interesting to follow. And I will of course include a link in the description down below so you can go and do that. And as I promised in the beginning of the video, I'm also going to give a short update to my portfolio. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we immediately notice is that there was a green circle for this week's episode. We go to the portfolio values tab. We can see that the portfolio has increased $1,700 compared to last week. At the same time, we can see that the cost has stayed unchanged, meaning no new investments. If we then head over to my dividends tab, my favorites tab, then we can see that I have received a little more than $185 in dividends within this week. They came from Burry and a Gray Realty Corporation. So needless to say, I'm quite happy about that. And while we're on the topic of dividends, if we then go to my forecast sheet here, now that January has been realized, I have moved my forecast. Unfortunately for me, my simple linear forecast here had predicted more than $500 in dividends for January, and since they came out much lower, this naturally lowers the expected dividends going forward. It lowers them actually so much that if we go all the way to the end here, then 21 years from now, I still won't be able to retire. Luckily for me, I'm not too worried that this number is way below the $4,000, which I have put as my threshold, since there still is a very natural explanation for this. Namely, that I have sold out of store capital, the biggest dividend contributor in my portfolio, and then heavily invested into Activision Blizzard. These numbers will once again start to change when I do investments like I recently did into Citigroup, where I'm receiving a significant amount of dividends. So I'm not too worried that the numbers currently look terrible compared to what they used to do. They will change, but it might take a year or two. And finally, if we go back to the overview arc here and scroll all the way to the top, just so you can see how each individual holding has been performing within this week, now is your chance. And this actually sums it up for yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. So if you have enjoyed the content and made it all the way to the end of the video, then please consider leaving a like or subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out a lot. And until I see you next time, bye!